Can we play a game together? Well, I'd love to give you the variety, and based on our world map in the background, you will give me the country. How does that sound? Do you remember earlier we spoke about the idea that varieties can be likened to languages? Yet with English, for example, even though Americans speak English, Australians speak English, and a lot of other countries too, we generally associate Britain with the home of English, let's say. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best way to look at varieties, but certainly it helps to know which countries specialize in which varieties. It makes choosing at a supermarket or a restaurant so much simpler, I believe. Okay, let's get started, shall we? So, if I was to say Riesling, which country would you connect with Riesling? Well, it's a little bit hard to find on the map here, but Germany is considered by many the home of Riesling. And it's not just German Riesling. If you go that one step further, you've got 13 regions within Germany, and each make a very distinctive style of Riesling. So there's a lot of fun honing your skills when it comes to focusing on one particular variety. And we happen to have a Riesling here, so maybe we can taste together. I personally always get kind of citrus and floral aromas when it comes to Riesling. And I'm not disappointed, getting lovely, intense grapefruit and lime and beautiful kind of white flower aromas. Oh, yum. This is my favorite variety. I just love the lightness and yet the freshness and the racy acidity, you know, that mouth-watering acidity that gets your saliva working in preparation for a meal. Okay, what about if I was to say Sauvignon Blanc? Where would you go for a country that's specialized in Sauvignon Blanc? Well, we would go to New Zealand, probably, because as a country, it is known as the home of Sauvignon Blanc. And again, we have a Sauvignon Blanc here. And when it comes to New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, one word that always comes to mind is pungent. You know, when you smell it, it's like getting knocked in the mouth by a prize boxer. Like it just lifts your head off the intense gooseberry, herbal and tropical aromas you get from New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And this is absolutely no exception. Interesting point about Sauvignon Blanc is that that herbal character is actually something that is from a particular group of compounds known as antioxidants. I know I'm diverting here a little bit, but when it comes to when the grapes ripen, what happens is as the grapes get riper, these antioxidant chemicals reduce in concentration such that birds can actually start to eat the grapes at the time when the seeds are ripe. It's just a little bit of extra information. These antioxidants are quite bitter in high concentrations, but when the seeds are ripe enough, the grapes actually become very attractive to eat by birds, and they spread the seed. But with varieties such as Sauvignon Blanc and also Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, you often still get a lot of that residual character from these antioxidants. They're known as methoxypyrazines. Anyway, just a bit of extra information. Grüne Veltliner. Well, which country would you say specializes in Grüne Veltliner? Well, just to the northeast of Italy, we have Austria. And Austria is the home of Grüne Veltliner. And Americans believe in calling it groovy because Grüne Veltliner is a little bit complicated to say. So groovy or Grüne Veltliner. What about Furmint? Furmint. If if you haven't tried Fumant, it's definitely worth trying, because just northeast of Austria is Hungary, and Hungary is the home of Fumant. Now, normally you would see Fumant in one of the most famous sweet wines in the world called Turkey. However, more and more producers are making this as an everyday white wine to drink, and it really has this amazing combination of body and freshness. Some people call it fiery even. Has beautiful explosive character of stone fruits and white flowers. Okay, moving on to the reds. If I was to say Pinotage, what would you think? Pinotage. It sounds a little bit like Pinot Noir, doesn't it? And that's for a very good reason. Pinotage is actually a crossing. So what they've done is they've taken two varieties and they've bred them together to create a new variety called Pinotage. And we would go to South Africa for Pinotage, because South Africa is the country that, more than any other country, really specialises in making very high quality Pinotage wines. Tempranillo. Tempranillo. The double L at the end is often pronounced y in the Spanish language, and in fact that is the key. Spain is the home of Tempranillo, and in fact throughout Spain, whether you're in the more southern regions or in the more northern regions, you will find Tempranillo everywhere. Of course, perhaps one of the most famous examples is Rioja, but watch out for the Ribera del Duero wines and the wines of Navarra and Castilla y León, because all of these regions make outstanding Tempranillo. Okay, now if I was to say Carmenere, which country do you think specializes in this grape variety? Well, I happen to have a sample here with me. This beautifully intensely colored ruby red wine with really distinctive tomato leaf and forest fruits. Very nice. Well, we go to the other side of the map now. We go to the continent of South America, and the long, thin, narrow country that goes down the west coast is Chile. And Chile is the country that really specializes in Carmenere. What about Malbec? I also happen to have a sample of Malbec here. And let's smell and taste, shall we? Not only is Malbec also very deeply colored, but it's also quite full-bodied. And I always get this very distinctive combination of violet flowers and black pepper. And yeah, one of my favorite red varieties. And we look to the east of Chile in the rather large country of Argentina for the best Malbecs in the world. And a country that that stretches from 20 degrees south to 40 degrees south latitude. All regions of Argentina produce outstanding but different styles of Malbec. And our last variety. Unfortunately, we don't have something to try here. I'm just going to swap to the other side of the camera now and go to my home country of Australia, because Shiraz or Syrah is really synonymous with Australian wine. We make some of the most outstanding examples of Syrah or Shiraz. Now, don't forget, we're focused here on these varietal-driven styles. So yes, it's true that villages such as Hermitage from the Rhone Valley also specialize in making 100% Shiraz wines, but they're perhaps more focused on the terroir side, whereas Australia is also focused on terroir, but the variety comes through very strongly in Australian Shiraz. Good. So we have 9 country specialists, and it's always good to try some of these new varieties if possible. And again, try and link them to the varieties that you already know and love. So for example, you might consider linking Ferment with Chardonnay because it tends to be a medium to full-bodied white wine. And you might consider Carmenere to be a kind of Merlot, but with just slightly different flavors. It also tends to be a more medium-bodied wine. One of the great pleasures is to try new varieties, especially when a whole country specializes in that variety. It's a great way to choose wine in supermarkets and at restaurants.